Couple weeks back, I talked about my top 10 favorite television shows of all time, and a lot of you guys asked me, well, Zach, what are your top 10 favorite television shows you watched growing up? Well, today I'm going to be going over not my top 10, but my top 15, and definitely a lot of honorable mentions, because this was a very hard list to do. I mean, honestly, like, leading up to me even filming this, I changed out a couple that I needed to because I started thinking and remembering them. So do understand if I don't have one of your favorites on this list, make sure to comment down below. Let me know what your favorite shows growing up were. We all grew up at different times, so there are going to be definitely different lists in here, but I think that's what's going to be fun in its own right. So I can't wait to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section, as well as hit that like and subscribe. And if you love being a geek like me, if you love talking movies, TV shows, and all sorts of stuff like this, hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss out on content like this on a daily basis. So coming down to my number 15 is going to be the Rugrats, and really this whole order is in no particular order. I could have shifted it back and forth. The Rugrats is one of the shows that really just touched on me, and especially when I was a young kid, I'm like, these babies are having better adventures than me as a 4-year-old, and I wanted to have adventures like them. You know, I grew up with the video game. I grew up with the 2 excellent Rugrat movies that I just rewatched, and they're still a lot of fun. But it's the characters of Tommy, Chucky, Dill, Phil, Lil, and Angelica that really just make this world fleshed out, and the adventures that these babies go on are great. And they always say, a baby's gonna do what a baby's gotta do. Coming up at number 14 is gonna be Kim Possible, one of the best opening intro songs ever, but also it's a spy thing, and I've always been a big fan of the spy genre. You know, a teenage girl in high school kicking ass. I love it. And Rufus is one of the best sidekicks probably ever to any Disney property. I love what they did with Rufus. But I think for me with Kim Possible, the thing that I really much love this is it didn't treat its audience like they were dumb. And I think it was actually ahead of its time when it came to a lot of animated shows. In fact, a lot of these Disney shows were ahead of its time. And Kim Possible is definitely one of those with fun action set pieces, with fun mysteries involved, and just figuring out how her and Ron are going to make it to be alive by the end of the day. That is the best stuff. And I would actually go as far as to say, when it comes to a lot of these shows, I felt like this one concluded in such a fantastic way. And coming in at my number 13 is another show that ended in a fantastic way, and that is Danny Phantom. I am a big fan of Ghost. I grew up with the Ghostbusters, and Danny Phantom just felt like a Nickelodeon version of the Ghostbusters. It had awesome mythology type world stuff. It had great characters that you really came to fall in love with, and in general, it had some nice action set pieces that also added in there. I really like the animation. I love the characters and the designs of everyone, the twists and turns that everything kind of insinuates, and in general, another great conclusion to another awesome action cartoon series, and one that really stuck with me, and in general is one that I actually kind of, when I'm bored, I just put on Danny Phantom and have some fun rewatching them. Coming up at number 12 is going to be Buzz Lightyear Star Command, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are like, that's a show? Yes, it was an animated movie that got turned into a show. And I love it. I mean, this is totally pure nostalgic. This is not one of the best shows out there in the entire world, to be completely honest. And I know that it very much abruptly ended. Sadly, this is a show that I wish we would have gotten more seasons of, and I actually am shocked it's not on Disney+. Like, this should be this is one of the prime shows that I think would nail and destroy on Disney+. And I hope one day that it actually ends up going on there, because I think this is a show that was very much underappreciated at the time. And just following around Buzz Lightyear and Star Command, and with all of his different kind of people with the aliens, and figuring out Zurg and all the different twists and turns with other characters they added in there, were some of the most fun aspects of the show. I'm not here to say that the animation was one of the most superb things, but as a giant Toy Story fan, it hit all the right marks for me. And coming in at my number 11 is going to the Animaniacs. You know, I grew up with the Looney Tunes, but the Animaniacs were just something special for me, and from what I understand, they're actually making new episodes to this, so this could actually end up going higher on my list if those episodes actually succeed, because what I've really liked is that a lot of these cartoon shows are kind of coming back in stride and in different ways, and not all the best, but I think Animaniacs is ones that it was always a giant satire and very meta to the Warner Brothers properties, and nowadays with all the different meta properties that they could touch on, I think it could work in wonders. Coming up at number 10 is another spy show, and that is codenamed Kids Next Door. If you have never watched this, you must watch this. I remember me and my friends used to pretend that we were kids, but we were also spies trying to take down the evil adults. Back in 1st and 2nd grade, this was one of my favorite shows growing up. It's one of the ones that really had a lot of cool gadgets and spy technology, and I love how their tree houses were pretty much their giant headquarters, and I just loved how they were able to flesh out this world. And I also had one of the coolest online games ever, and one of the original ones that I used to play a lot of on the computer. Coming up at number 9 is going to be Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And this one's just pure nostalgic. I gotta stop singing now. Scooby-Doo is probably the oldest show on this list that I can possibly say. And I think a lot of that is because the main characters were always fun. I was always obsessed with like weird horror monsters for some reason. And Scooby-Doo really played around in that genre. You know, we know that they're not real. We know that they're going to unmask the person by the end. And I really love that. You know, Scooby-Doo's always been a big part of my life. And so is a lot of the Hanna-Barbera characters. But Scooby-Doo in particular was the one that I really grew up with the most. And it's one that I actually can put on randomly and just enjoy and watch tenfold all the time. Coming down to my number 8 is going to be Teen Titans, one of the most excellent DC shows we have ever gotten. This is one that I actually plan on rewatching very much soon, because this is like some of the clips and stuff that I do end up rewatching just kind of like as I'm passing time. It's just great. It still is a show that holds up. It's one that I do wish we would have gotten more seasons to. I think this is a show that could have actually benefited that. I think they just finally started hitting their strides in the last season, and I'm very much appreciated that they did tie him in with the Teen Titans Go stuff, even though I don't love that show. I think there are issues with it. It definitely is for a different generation of kids. But Teen Titans was kind of ahead of its time when it came to all these superhero properties, and DC was really killing it when it came to the DC animated stuff. We had Teen Titans, we had Justice League Unlimited, and some others that I'm definitely going to be talking about. So definitely Teen Titans had to make this list at some way. Coming down on my number 7, though, is probably the creepiest show I've ever watched as a kid, and that is Courage the Cowardly Dog. One show that absolutely, in every single way, was one of my favorite things to tune into, but also was one of the scariest things too. Some of the imagery in this show is very messed up, and it's still one of the shows that, I'm not gonna lie, it very much is intense, and it actually keeps that ramping up. The animation is kind of disgusting and disturbing, but I love it, and this is the show that is prime category to come back in some capacity, some way down the line, because I think it would kill on certain places. And if you've never watched Courage the Cowardly Dog and you're a giant horror fan, you need to. Before I get to my top 6, guys, make sure to comment down below again and let me know your guys' favorite childhood shows growing up. Pretty much everything I've talked about is all animation, because that is really what I grew up with. I could easily talk about the Phil of the Futures, the Zack and Cody's, and all sorts of like this, but the animation was like always been my go-to stuff in that category. So make sure again to comment down below your guys' thoughts, hit that like and subscribe, and if you want to be a geek like me, if you want to keep talking stuff like this, I want to keep discussing with you guys as well, and so make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, as well as thank you to my Patreon supporters who do support these videos, and of course just thank you to you who's watching this video. If you want to check out movies early when they finally do open up, head on over to Sandwich on Films and keep track on that website. But of course I do have tons of honorable mentions to get through, so let's get through it. We have the Powerpuff Girls, Recess, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, really close to making it in, Blue's Clues, Lilo and Stitch the show. I was really close to putting that one in fact over Kim Possible, but I decided, the thing is, I love Lilo and Stitch, but nothing just heads up to the movie. Rocko's Modern Life. Yes, I love Rocko's Modern Life. That was really hard not to put in this list. Angry Beavers, SpongeBob, Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, as you can see behind me. The Flintstones, The Proud Family, very much ahead of its time. American Dragon Jake Long, I actually like this close to putting in as well. Didn't put it in there because I didn't think the show, like, I didn't like the ending of that show. I thought it was kind of rushed. Gargoyles, X-Men, I already mentioned Recess, Mucho Lucho, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Ed, Edd and Eddy, Invader Zim, and again, there are probably a ton more that I could talk about, but I had to keep my honorable mention list just a little bit smaller than it should be. Another one I do want to mention, though, if you've never watched, is House of Mouse. That was a really cool show in the way that they kind of took us back to the old classic Mickey Mouse stuff. So I think the movie is actually on Disney Plus. If you want to check it out, you should. Coming down to my number 6 is going to be Jackie Chan Adventures. Now, I've always been a major fan of Jackie Chan. I love kung fu stuff, and I've always been like very key to it. My dad really grew me up on this, but the Jackie Chan Adventure show was always on exactly when I came home from school, and I would come home, throw all my backpack, throw all my homework on the table, sit down and watch that show for quite a bit. And sadly, the last time I actually watched this show, it's kind of a sad memory. I found out my grandmother had passed away. I do want to actually go back to this show because I think it was a lot of fun with the mythology and everything that they kind of played around in that. But this show's always hit a soft spot for me because it was one of the shows that was kind of for me around that time when my grandma was sick and then finding out that she died. And I think that's why it's so high up on my list. And again, I do love the animation. I love the mythology they bring about inside this kung fu type of world. And a lot of the action stuff was really fun. I wanted to revisit this show show very much soon, and in general the world. And if you've never ever seen this show and you love Jackie Chan, this is right up your alley. Coming out on my number 5 though is Cody Loc, one of my first explorations into anime, and one of the ones that really mixed 3D and anime. It was one of the most unique perspectives I've ever seen when it comes down to something in animation. It was one of the most unique things Cartoon Network had going at the time, and absolutely one of the best shows. It felt like it had a great conclusion. It felt like it was a great series overall, and it felt like each episode just built on one another from the very beginning, and I love what they were able to do with this show. It really hit its stride, and it's one that I actually love revisiting still. Down at my number 4 is this one. I kind of cheated on this one, and I kind of had to, due to the fact that there are 2 iterations of the show, and that is Star Wars The Clone Wars, which is the one that just finished, Star Wars Clone Wars, which is from the guy who created Samurai Jack, which is also another honorable mention. Very close to putting that in there, but I feel like that one's a little bit more of an adult show that I kind of got into at a later date. But definitely the thing about Star Wars Clone Wars, that Travisky, excuse me if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, who created Dexter's Laboratory, Samurai Jack, he created a Clone Wars show that not many people have seen, and it's absolutely incredible. I love what they were able to do. It's only 20 micro episodes. You could literally watch it in one day, but this was originally what the Clone Wars was. This is when they started introducing characters like Grievous in, and it was supposed to bridge the gap between Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith, and the animation is great. It's literally Samurai Jack mixed with Star Wars, and what is better than that? That was one of the main things that I loved watching, and also not Ahsoka, but Ventress showed up in there, and that was wonderful. But then there's also Star Wars Clone Wars, which is just my favorite era of Star Wars, is the Clone Wars, the prequels, and why I don't love the movies in particular, and I hate Attack of the Clones, the movie. Well, I don't hate it. My dad kind of put a perspective for Star Wars. Star Wars is pizza. Pizza's always good, pretty much. And Star Wars is that. I love Star Wars. It's my favorite franchise of all time. And Clone Wars, I mean, it's so high up for me because of the way it ended. It ended in one of the most great ways that you could possibly ever say for a show ending, and I think that's why this one's so high up for me, and it's hard for me to differentiate both of these because I love them both for different reasons, and they're both kind of titled the same way, both taking over some of the same storylines, but I had to mention them. Coming up at number 3, yes, it's another cheat, I'm sorry, but I include this all, and that is Toonami. Toonami, if you never got to check this out on Cartoon Network, was an anime block of time, and this is really what got me into anime. You had the likes of Dragon Ball, Zatch Bell, Naruto, Inuyasha, One Piece, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! All showing up in there, and really all these shows, I mean, probably being some of the biggest influences on my life growing up. Toonami really explored that world. I mean, I could do a whole video just on Toonami and all the different shows I watched in there, even some of the weird ones. I mean, if you've never seen that one, that is insane. Also, one of the shows that I thought was going to be completely stupid, and I watched and I loved it. But all these different shows that I mentioned that happened around this block of time, and even just in anime in general, were all great pieces of time for me and shows that I still revisit to this date. Coming down at my number 2, I love Batman. You see the statue behind me of Batman Beyond. It's Batman Beyond. And I think there's 2 different generations of this. There's Batman the Animated Series, which I could also make an argument to be on here. There's Batman Beyond as well. And then there's the Batman from the Justice League Unlimited series. And I think there were different sections of generations that watched those. I grew up on Batman Beyond. Then I went back and watched Batman the Animated Series. And then, of course, got into Justice League Unlimited. But Batman Beyond was the one that really hit me. I love the suit. I love the different exploration of this. And in fact, this is actually my first interpretation of the character of Batman that I'd ever seen. I love this old mentor taking in this younger kid to formulate him into being the Batman. And just in general, I think this is one of the characters that I actually hope they eventually not just bring into a live action format, I think could really work. And I think a one-off film, and I said this on Twitter, I had an epiphany that I actually do believe that we will eventually get a Dark Knight sequel, but it'll be a Batman Beyond, and I think Christian Bale will be an older Bruce Wayne taking in the mentor of Terry, and I love that idea. I hope they actually do it. Coming down to my number 1, I mentioned my favorite television shows of all time, and I had to mention it here, and that is Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is now a new show on Netflix. You definitely have to see it if you have never watched it before. It's one of the best television shows ever created, and it's one that still holds up to this day. It's one that has some of the best animation I've ever seen. It's probably Nickelodeon's best show ever. It's one that has an excellent ending. It's one that really, I would go as far as to say, there's not a single con that I can say to this show. I think everything about it is near perfection, and I think every single person who's ever watched this show will probably agree. I haven't seen Korra yet. I've seen some episodes. I definitely want to get into that show next. But Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of the most brilliant shows ever created for the screen, and I'm so excited to see what they can do with this live action thing they're doing on Netflix. I think it could really work for a different format and actually bring a newer audience in. But in general, what are you doing right now? The video's over. Go watch Avatar: The Last Airbender if you never have. But guys, that's my top 15 childhood shows of all time, plus a lot of honorable mentions and some of the cheats in there. Thank you guys again so much for watching this video. I hope you guys did enjoy it, as well as hit that like and subscribe and never miss out on content like this on a daily basis. I hope to see you guys soon, so of course, until next time, stay classy.